This is going to be a trip that pushes me in all aspects. We're spending 4 days in sub-zero temperatures, traversing the Canadian Rockies, camping the entire way. Because of the intensity of this trip, I'm doing it with 2 other experienced winter campers, Kane and Marty. I picked Marty up from the airport this morning. That has led to a pretty late start on the day. We're hoping to get to camp before sunset because we're crossing 2 avalanche paths on the way to that campsite, and we don't want to be crossing those in the dark. And we're getting the last little bits of sun here before it's completely dark. 1 more avalanche path to go. Having fun?
Yeah, that's a good first day.
So we made it to camp in the dark. We did make it through the avalanche paths in the light, which was good, but a lot more obstacles to come on this trip. Like I said, it's gonna be pushing me in all aspects. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to it. Got the tent set up. My thermometer broke, so it's definitely below -30, potentially below -35. So we're gonna be getting into our sleeping bags, staying warm tonight, and seeing you in the morning. Good morning. We're waking up while it's still dark out because we want to give ourselves enough time today to get through the day while making good decisions and not feeling too rushed. We're going to be dealing with a few obstacles on the day. Number 1 is finding where to go. Number 2, we should have explored last night around the campsite and tried to find where the campsite toilet is. That would have been great because then we would have had a nice hardened path there. So we're gonna have to either post hole there or wait till we put our skis on. The second thing is coordinating getting ready this morning. While being a group, there's a lot of benefits. We're going to go over those over the course of the trip. One of the downsides is you have to make sure everyone's on the same timeline. Otherwise, if someone gets ready a little bit quicker, then they might be just standing around cold. So just coordinating that is sometimes a little bit more difficult. We're going to be getting up into the Alpine today too, a little bit more complex terrain. So we're going to be making good decisions around avalanche risk. Even though this entire trip was planned to be on low angle terrain with minimal avalanche risk, we're still going to be on our toes and try to avoid anything spooky. And if we do encounter something spooky, then we'll just turn around and come home. We got a little bit of a late start on the day, left camp at 9:30, so we're gonna have to make up some time in order to make it to our next camp before dark. The story of this morning is elevation gain. It's gonna be a bit of a slog up to Healy Pass, but once you get up to Healy Pass, we can switch our skis into ski mode, which is amazing. That's one of the best things about this ski touring setup, and then ski down to Egypt Lake, which would be really nice. I think we should have some good snow and get some good turns in there. But like I was saying yesterday, after Egypt Lake, that's where things get a little bit complicated. The route finding is going to be difficult, the trail breaking is going to be difficult, and even just making it to camp is going to be a challenge. So why do this? Why go out in -30, -35 degree temperatures in the dead of winter, in deep snow, through avalanche terrain, in the mountains? That's something that I've been thinking about, and really, especially with this trip, wanted to dive into a little bit more and share my thoughts on why trips like this are really special to me and something that I don't ever want to give up. Bit of a slog coming up this uphill, especially with heavy winter packs. How heavy do you think your pack is, Marty?
Well, at home, with the camera gear that's here and the pack, I was at 42, and I threw in an extra pair of gloves, which I'm very, very happy I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably 45 pounds.
Yeah, plus everything that's on you too. Yeah. So it's like, it's a lot of weight to be carrying uphill. Here. I stopped for a pee, and those guys got way ahead of me. Try to catch up. I feel like that's going to be the story of this trip with my honeymoon fitness right now and a little bit of extra weight on me. So we had a nice easy trail coming up here, beautiful views, but this is where the adventure really starts because whoever's trail we were following up here, it stopped right here. So we're gonna have to break trail up to Healy Pass and then probably the rest of the day. Yep. And the snow is deep. It snows, look how, that's how far my pole is penetrating. Okay, you wanna give us a couple steps? Let's see how, yeah.
Pretty good, there's a cross.
Pretty good, but definitely some ski penetration, which is gonna make it a bit of a slog. Luckily, Kane's a beast, so he'll break us some trail. How you feeling, Marty?
I've got all sorts of feelings. So traveling on skis is a first for me, and all of this is new. So I definitely feel for the first time in a long time I'm the weakest link of an expedition, which is okay, because this traveling with this is different than what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, it took some energy out of me to get up here. So
yeah, I'm dying here at number 2 in line. Kane's up there still breaking trail like a machine. How's it going, Kane? Hard, yeah.
Hard work.
We'll rotate through at some point. Kane's just in by far the best shape out of the 3 of us, and like I said, it's a machine. So we made it up to the top of Healy Pass thanks to Kane's awesome trail breaking. Some phenomenal views over there. Now we're gonna transition. We're gonna take the skins off of the bottom of our skis. The skins are what are giving us that stickiness. We can go uphill, and then we're gonna ski down, lock our heels in and ski down basically towards that peak, cutting a little bit right of it. It's noon right now, so we got about 4 or 5 hours until the sun starts setting. I think we can make it to the campsite pretty good. We got about 8 kilometers left. 2 kilometers an hour. Yeah. So one of the things that I'm going to do on this is I have my fuel bottle on the outside. I'm going to put that into a little bit more of a secure spot, because after my sleep system and my insulation, the next thing that's pretty critical is the fuel, because this is what gives us water. And we're out here long enough in a remote enough area that dehydration would be a real concern. So in case you're unfamiliar, these are skins. Basically, they glide in one direction, the direction that you're going, and then there's the little hairs, because they're only going in one direction, they catch and don't allow you to go backwards. So it's a really cool system. It makes traveling in this kind of terrain really easy. And then once you want to ski downhill, they just come right off and you got a traditional ski. So this is the binding that we're using. You have pins at the front that your boot goes into, and then it can pivot on those pins. Then the heel turns once you get into ski mode, and you lock the heel of your boot into those pins. So Kane's gonna lead us down. Marty's gonna go in the middle, and then I'm gonna follow up in the rear and caboose this little ducky train. Let's go, buddy. Got this. Woo! Yeah, skiing! Woo! Nice. How's Marty doing? Yeah, Marty! Woo! Woo! So we got a little bit of a ski in, starting to flatten up here, so we're gonna put on our skins and start slogging. Everyone did great. That was an awesome little ski. No incidents, no digging people out of tree wells, so that was fun. I alluded a little bit to the fact that this trip probably wouldn't be able to happen if it wasn't for being in a group. And this area that we just skied is one of the reasons why. I would not ski that area alone. There's too many dangers. You catch an edge, you end up in a tree well, you get buried by snow, you hit your head and just freeze to death. There's a lot of risk, and having other people to watch your back is really nice, and I think essential for a trip like this in an area like that. There's a lot of other benefits, but maybe we'll get to those once we get to camp, because we got another 5 kilometers of slogging trail breaking to go, and it's going to be a lot of work to get to camp before dark.
Take off one skin.
We made it to this little cabin here, which is just past halfway, quite a bit past halfway. We're going to boil some water, eat some food, hopefully get our energy up in advance of the slog. That's going to be the rest of the day. Whew. We're all hydrated and fed. We're heading down into the valley down there. I'm going to hopefully follow the river to camp, but route finding might be an issue. If route finding is an issue, then we're definitely going to be getting to camp before dark or after dark, which is not ideal. Woohoo! Challenge right now is route finding. We're trying to follow this creek because we know the creek goes to the campsite. The trail, summer trails up in the woods there, but hopefully we can keep following the creek because that's gonna be a lot easier. We're not gonna have to be dealing with blow down trees and things like that. But it also has some micro topography that's really tough as you get to these kind of rocky areas right through here. It's also 2:47 right now, so we only have a few hours until full darkness. We're making pretty good time. I'm breaking trail right now. That's another benefit of a group, especially 3 people, is you can rotate who's up front, who's breaking trail. Because following a trail, especially on the flats, is pretty little effort, pretty easy. But if you're up front breaking trail, it's probably about 2 or 3 times more work. So it's nice to share that load. It was also a little bit cold and dreary when we left the cabin there with the wind and everything. And I found just being in a group just kept my spirits up a little bit. Whereas if I was alone going through there and having to break trail, my emotions would probably be all over the place and my mood would probably be a little bit down. What a day. We're just packing out our campsite here. I made a trail to the outhouse because I get poo anxiety in the morning and I like to be able to just get there as quickly as possible when it hits me. What a day. What a day. That was an awesome day. Definitely pushed, I think, all of us. We got into some epic alpine areas. We got some turns in going downhill. And then we had to do some route finding, which didn't turn out to be as bad as I thought it was going to. But we still had to make sure we were following the trail and sticking to it. I just caught my tips, fell over, too tired to try and get up, so I just took my pack off. I'm gonna go set my tent up right there, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a tour of my tent and sleep system, because I have some thoughts about my sleep system after last night, because it got cold, and I felt cold. And it's because of one of the pieces of gear that I used. This trip is brought to you by Garage Run Gear, which is really appropriate because they've been a friend of this channel for years. And I'm experiencing this trip with friends, which is making it that much more special. I could say so many good things about Garage Run Gear. They're my favorite online store. Even if they weren't sponsoring videos, I'd still be buying gear from them all the time because they are supporting small cottage brands and helping bring innovative products to market. Things like this snow fluke from Suluk 46, which is an amazing piece of titanium engineering which allows you to anchor your guy out points or your tent into the snow really easily. They're expensive, but they're pretty cool. If you haven't been to Garage Run Gear in a while, I definitely recommend checking out their new gear page. It's probably one of my favorite websites on the internet because they're always posting new things there, cool things that you probably wouldn't see anywhere else. I'll have links to Garage Run Gear as well as the new gear page down in the video description so you guys can go check it out for yourself. If you guys watched my gear video before this trip, you'd know that I was debating whether to bring the Samaya tent or to share a tent with one of the other 2 guys, probably with Marty in the giant front range, but decided to go with the Samaya because it's growing on me. I really like the fact that I can set it up very quickly because it's a freestanding tent, but it has enough space for one person, even with a wide sleeping pad and all the gear. I do leave my pack outside, but there is enough room in the corner that I could put it in there. Something I was worried about is frost buildup on the inside and then getting rid of that in the mornings, but I'm able to just wipe it off and then shake the tent out and all the frost is gone. I'm not carrying a whole bunch of snow around with me, which I've had to do with other freestanding tents. It's a big pain in the butt. As for my sleep system, pretty standard, Polar Ranger, quilt on top, but the tents are extreme. I was very optimistic about the tents are extreme after a trip I did with it where temperatures got down to -30 overnight and even down to -35 in the morning. But last night it got down to probably about -30, and I was cold on it. I was feeling a lot of cold coming up through the ground, and that inconsistency is a little bit weird. I don't know why it would have felt cold last night, but not on the other night, because if this pad is warm, then it's great. But if it's inconsistent, difficult to use, and not warm, then just chalk it up to another failed wintered pad, and we're back to the Xtherm. What do you have for dinner tonight, Kane?
Got a flat out feast, Cajun jicama, pork skillet.
What about you, Marty? What do you got?
I think I'm going spaghetti.
Spaghetti? Happy Yak spaghetti?
Yeah, happy yak spaghetti. Hopefully no happy yakking.
I got Alpenair Mexican style grilled chicken bowl. I've had this one before. It's pretty good.
Nice.
For the other things that I'm eating on this trip for breakfast, I have these oatmeal that I made myself. Just oatmeal, chocolate chips, dried fruit in Rusby bags. Rusby bags, definitely get on that if you haven't checked them out already. And then a lot of electrolytes from Element, and then I also have some Tailwind ones which are caffeinated and then have 200 calories in them. So I have this in the morning, just kind of give me a little boost. Some trail mix, fruit bars, but the bulk of my calories during the day are from these Pro bars. They're small. I don't get sick of eating them. They taste really good, and they have a lot of calories. I think like almost 500 calories if I'm not mistaken. But I'm still going to be in a calorie deficit on this trip, which is fine. 4 days of calorie deficit, no big deal. I'm feeling good, and that's the key. I'm just trying to make sure I don't bonk, or that I have enough energy to get me through each of the days. I also have these apple cider packets that I mixed with some water, a little sugar deliciousness. It's a nice little treat and warms up the insides on a cold trip like this. Good night. Good morning. I had a great sleep, partly because it warmed up. It started off about -25 when we were getting breakfast sorted, but then it warmed up to about -15, and the low overnight was probably about -10. So very, very toasty. Even though I slept warm last night, I'm still a little bit unsure about the tents are extreme. I did some things in order to try and make it so that it was as warm as it could be last night, but I want to give it one more night before I share with you guys kind of what I think is going on with it and what my thoughts are and whether I recommend it moving forward. As we get breakfast going this morning, the goal is to have a little bit of an earlier start than yesterday. We took a while dilly-dallying around camp. Hopefully today we can get out a little bit quicker because we have a longer day with more trail breaking and a good uphill section that we're gonna have to head up to. And Kane is optimistic that there's gonna be a trail up to the high point for the day, but I think that is very optimistic.
You were optimistic about the trail here.
Yeah.
I'm more optimistic about that trail.
I think we're both going to be wrong, and we're going to have to be breaking trail the entire time. We're also getting to day 3 and heading into night 3. I think there's a big difference between a 3-day trip and a 4-day trip. Night 1 on a trip is just generally fairly easy. You're prepared, you have all your gear. Night 2, you can kind of get by even if some things may have gone wrong. Night 3, you have to have made sure that nights 1 and 2 went well if you're going to be successful, warm, and comfortable on night 3. So far, I think we're doing pretty good. Everyone's sleep systems are performing pretty good. We're warm. The temperatures are going up. That's going to create some complications for the day as far as moisture management and everything like that. But then it also makes it a little bit easier to stay warm. Like I mentioned, one of the big aspects of a multi-day trip like this is managing moisture. You're always sweating, you're breathing out moisture, and if that gets into your major insulation pieces like your sleeping bag or even your ski boots, then you're going to get cold and you're going to be in for a very rough time, potentially dangerous time on those later days. There's a couple strategies that I use for my major pieces of gear that I want to keep from getting moisture inside them. For my sleeping bag, I use a top quilt that's made with a synthetic material. So basically this moves the dew point from within my sleeping bag to within the synthetic insulation, which handles it a lot better, as well as when I breathe out from my sleeping bag, all that moisture is going out into the air of my tent. It then kind of settles onto the surfaces around it, and I'd rather that settle on the synthetic insulation instead of my sensitive down insulation. And because of that strategy, even after 2 nights now, my sleeping bag is pretty lofted, nice and warm, nice and toasty. The other thing is for my feet. If you guys watched my trip last year on Skokie Loop with Kane, I did not bring any way to manage moisture inside my boots, and I had to stick my Nalgene filled with boiling water inside the boot in order to warm it up, because otherwise it was just too stiff and frozen. So normally what I do is I bring a vapor barrier. So I use a plastic bag that's not permeable to moisture or air, and then I stick that over my foot, I put a sock over it, and then I stick that into my boot. It prevents any moisture from my very sweaty foot from getting inside the insulation of the boot. If you're able to manage moisture effectively, you could go out for multiple days, multiple weeks, and be okay. Yeah. Another day of breaking trail. We're gonna be splitting up the work, rotating through, keep our legs fresh. All of us are starting to feel the kilometers catching up to us, especially with slogging through and breaking trail. This first part should be pretty good as we make it to a spot called Shadow Lake. Then we punch uphill, gaining about 700 meters of elevation. Probably won't be a very well-defined trail there, so it's gonna be really tough to kind of navigate while going uphill and breaking trail. It's also warmed up quite a bit, so opposite of previous days where we've been dealing with trying to stay warm, today it's gonna be trying to not get too warm and sweaty, which will then eventually cool you off once you stop moving. Like I was talking about yesterday, it's been a lot of fun on this trip being part of a team. I'm definitely learning a lot about kind of group dynamics, group communication, and just working together in order to achieve a goal, especially when you're on difficult trips like this. And there's been a lot of instances where I've been able to push myself, both physically, mentally, as well as with my skills. I've kind of talked about it before, but I'm not super experienced with liquid stoves, so I've been gaining experience with that, as well as learning a bunch of tips and tricks from the other guys. I just finished trail breaking for a kilometer and a bit. Now I'm at the back of the line. It's crazy how big of a difference there is between the energy you expend trail breaking versus following up in the rear. So it's so nice having 3 people versus doing this by yourself or even with 2 people. We're getting to an area with a lot more deadfall as well as downhill, so we're having to work our way around it. It's complicated in spots, not super easy, but we're making it happen. Here comes Marty, kind of picking his way down. There's the trail right there, like follows down, but we had to go around it. This is the kind of terrain that I'm worried about for heading up to the pass where we're getting all the elevation, but instead of having to navigate around all this blowdown going downhill, which is not too bad, we'd be doing it going uphill, which is a lot harder. Back in front, breaking trail, but it's all downhill, so it's real nice and kind of fun. Woo! 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 Yeah! Kane hit something. Oh no. Do you need help?
I want to get out of the way.
Made it to Valley Bottom. Good job, guys. We see a trail that's groomed by a snowmobile in order to bring people to a lodge that's right at the base of the elevation that we're going to be gaining. So it's going to be nice and cruisy. And then we'll see once we get to the lodge whether people head up to Gibson Pass or that has some tracks through it. This will help us make up some time though as we head up this trail. So we're going to be continuing down this trail until we hit the lodge, and then cutting back across that slope, and then going up to that saddle right there, to the right of that bald face. Something key when you're on winter trips like this is to always have your puffy jacket accessible, because you never know when you're gonna need to bust it out for a stop like this, or maybe even an emergency, without setting up your full camp and sleep system. This is your primary piece of insulation, and this is what you're gonna want anytime you stop, because as soon as you stop, you start getting cold. If you're interested in any of the gear that I'm using on this trip, including this puffy jacket, as well as my full ski setup, then check out the links in the description. I'll have my full Pack Wizard gear list there. Had a nice little lunch at the lodge here. They provided us with a muffin. We got some great views, so shout out to Shadow Lake Lodge. They gave us some beta too, that there's no trail up to Gibbon Pass, so we're gonna be breaking trail and route finding. It's gonna be a nice challenge. And like I said, definitely pushing ourselves on this trip. These uphill slogs are one thing in the summertime. They're another with 35, 40 pounds on your back going through snow in the winter. We've been following an old trail from about a week ago before a snowfall. It's been pretty easy going. But every once in a while we hit an area that requires a bit more route finding. Those cut logs are always a good indicator that we're on trail. And then these super steep sections, don't know how steep it looks on camera, but this takes the energy right out of you, especially if you're breaking trail. The trail that we were following has been gone for probably about a kilometer and a half now, so we've been having to do some pretty aggressive route finding through deep snow, uphill. It's been a challenge, but it's been fun. We've gotten off trail a couple times, but using my watch, I've been able to kind of get us back on trail. So as usual, when I'm having to route find, the Garmin Enduro watch has been a lifesaver. I've said it once, I'll say it again. This is tough going. Super sloggy. But I think we're getting close to the summit of, or the top of Gibbon Pass. Fingers crossed, it's just up there where the rollover is. Woo. That was a big push. Took a lot out of all of us. It was definitely a team effort. We wouldn't have been able to probably make it up individually. Even Kane, who's a beast, definitely was a group effort. And I mentioned that as this trip was gonna push me in all aspects. And while it is pushing me like physically, mentally, skill-wise, it's also pushing me in different ways as far as just gaining an appreciation for what you can do when you are in a team and working with other people. It just can bring you to places that you may not have been able to get on your own. So we're rolling over Gibbon Pass right now. Have a few kilometers to go, kind of following contour down to Twin Lake, and then a little bit of elevation gain to Upper Twin Lake. That was a slog, but we're up here. Now we're trying to fight the daylight again. It's 4 o'clock right now, an hour left till sunset. We have a few kilometers left. Hopefully we make it before it gets fully dark, But once we get there, I'll kind of show you the different camp routines for all three of us, because everything's different, which has been interesting and fun to see. The sun is gone. We're navigating by moonlight now. Luckily the moon is strong and bright. We're almost there though. We made it to the campsite at Upper Twin Lakes. Pretty beat. We're gonna set up right at the edge of the lake here, a little bit further back, just so we're not impacting the lake in any way. But step one is gonna be packing out a tent pad. My next step after I get my tent pad all stamped out, hydrate. If I'm feeling hungry, I'll have some food because I'm usually in a calorie deficit, but I had a little snack a little bit earlier, so definitely gonna just drink all of the water that I have left right now because very soon we're gonna be making water. We're gonna set up our communal cooking area right there where we dig down, create little seats. Usually Kane and Marty kind of get their tents laid out, or Marty gets his tent laid out, and then Kane starts digging his hole and starts getting water boiling, whereas I like to set my tent up and get my sleep system going, get my sleeping bag lofting up. But everyone's been warm and comfortable, so depends on what your priorities are. Marty and Kane have trekking pole tents. They need to let the ground set a little bit more before they can set up, whereas my freestanding tent can get set up basically right away. And then once the tent's set up, like I said, then I'm gonna get my sleep system all set up, inflate my sleeping pad, and get my sleeping bag lofting up. And then we'll get on to the next steps. The other thing they did last night, which I think may have been why the Tensor Extreme slept warmer last night than the first night, although it was quite a bit warmer, is after I inflated it, I kind of just hit it around a little bit because the Mylar film inside of it is suspended, and then it's supposed to drop onto these pillars that are oriented a way that allows there to be 4 layers of Mylar. But I wonder if in the winter if it freezes or something like that, so I hit it all up, try and loosen that Mylar, get it to lay so that I get maximum insulation. I'll let you guys know tomorrow whether I think this is what's making it perform or not, and then whether it's worth it to deal with something like that or to just have the reliability of an X-Therm. Then I start digging my hole, but I don't necessarily start cooking my food yet. I've got one more step before I do that. My step after the hole is to get changed in my warm clothes because I don't like to catch a chill, because as soon as that happens then it's hard to beat. So I like to get nice and warm, nice and toasty. Usually by this point a lot of the moisture on my body and in my clothing that I was active all day is kind of evaporated away, so it's a good time to get changed for me. Kane has a different approach, a bit of a different approach. He throws on his puffy. He doesn't really change, he just layers on over top of everything. Right, Kane?
Yeah.
Now that I'm changed in my warm clothes, now time to make dinner. I'm doing on this trip is, in order to keep my feet warm, I'm putting down a little Z-seat into the bottom of my little seating area. Just adds a little bit of extra insulation. Heading to bed after a pretty tough day. I think that was the toughest day that I've ever done in the wintertime. 17K, over 700 meters of elevation gain, breaking trail, 35-40 pound packs. It was a slog, but feeling very proud of all of us. I think like we wouldn't be able to do that alone, and it was kind of just made it a little bit sweeter getting to experience it with the team. And then tomorrow morning I'll give you my final thoughts on the Tensor Extreme, and we'll have a nice breakfast before closing out the day. Good morning. I slept warm last night, no cold spots on it, but it was also a really warm night, getting close to about probably -5 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Fahrenheit. But I do think that kind of shaking the pad up a little bit, getting the Mylar film loose does make a big difference. I have a sneaking feeling that it sticks together, especially when it's cold out. But for a winter pad, that's not really what you want. You want something that just works, no fiddling, no hassle. So on trips like this, where it's 4 days of pretty committing terrain and area, I'll probably be bringing my X-Therm in the future, unless I can really just figure out what's going on with the Tensor Extreme, because I don't like the uncertainty of, is it gonna keep me warm? Is it not gonna keep me warm? I'm just skiing around looking for the outhouse because we weren't able to search for it last night because we got into camp at dark. But definitely pushed myself on this trip and kind of reflecting on why, trying to give you guys an explanation why I'd push myself like this. And I think the big reason why is growth and learning. On a trip like this where every day is a challenge and I'm learning new things and skills, it's just a lot of growth, and I really value that. I think it's important to be growing and learning. Oh, I found the outhouse. Ooh, just around the corner there. Ha, nice. And that's just part of human nature, I think, is that we should always be trying to push ourselves, try to learn a little bit. And maybe that looks different for everybody. For me, that looks like a 4-day winter camping trip in the Canadian Rockies. For someone else, maybe that's going for a hike. Maybe that's just going for a walk around your neighborhood. I think it's important to also keep in mind that everything's different and everyone's circumstances are different. Even for me, sometimes pushing myself is just like having a conversation with somebody because I'm an introvert. But I really value these kind of experiences and these kind of trips and look forward to doing more in the future. If you want to see my full gear list for this trip, go check out this video right up here. Pretty much everything that I talked about in that gear list I used on this trip, except for maybe this jacket. This is the Rab Mythic Ultra. It came right before the trip and it's impressed me a lot. It's very lightweight for how warm it is and super packable. So great for a trip where you're covering a lot of mileage at a lot of elevation.